Hi, welcome to another episode of the Gentleman's Jury. I'm your host, Robbie, and today we're going to be talking about something kind of interesting to me called the Great Green Wall and how it contributes to the amount of oxygen we have in the world. Um, Before we kind of get into it, I want to explain, why it's important. So, if you were to open up Google Maps, right, and the you look into Africa, which is where the Great Green Wall project is, and you look at the amount of green that you see in Africa, it's mostly in the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, sorry, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Cameroon, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and then it kind of goes further south from there too. Angola, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and South Sudan. Now, if you look into the just north of those, or in some of those countries, and kind of in north, you'll notice on Google Maps it's a light tan, which represents the Sahara, and then there's this like darker tan, which is the Sahel. The Sahel region is the mix between straight desert like the Sahara and the tropical region that you're seeing like in the DRC. Now, if you look at where those countries are, right, or the countries that contain the Sahel, you're looking at countries like Sudan, Chad, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Senegal, and part of Eritrea, which is directly across from Yemen. And you notice it it spans the entire continent from the Atlantic to the Red Sea, that region there. What they're doing is they're trying to combat the Sahara. They're trying to prevent deforestation and the Sahara kind of invading south, because it has been for a while. If you look at a map back in the 1920s, a lot like the green was in Niger. Now you look and it's all desert. The green was a lot more in Sudan and Chad, and Mali had a lot more green. Part of the issue that you're all probably saying is, well, what about water? What percentage of water are they getting? And it's on average like 0 to 3 inches of rain. That's how much water the Sahara gets. Now, I'm not saying they're gonna repopulate the entire African continent with trees, but we should really consider that the DRC is the second home houses the second largest rainforest. The first, obviously, being the Amazon. So, if the Sahel region kind of continues to be pushed south like they're predicting, then we're going to lose a large portion of oxygen that is produced by those rainforests. Now, there's a big misconception that many people make that trees produce the most oxygen, or general idea is that's how most people think. Plants that we see every day, like you walk by a tree or a bush, it produces the most oxygen on Earth. That's wrong. 50 to 80% of our oxygen actually comes from the ocean, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. But I just want to talk about how by losing trees, we're still losing a decent amount of our oxygen. So you're probably wondering, well, how do we combat this then, right? And I actually recently come across this interesting idea that China does. And I hate China, but sometimes they have really innovative ideas. And I don't think China's the only one that did it. It's just the people that the article I read was about what they were doing. And it's aquifers. You dig a hole, right, in the coast, and then you put a little wall just at sea level, or right where the top of the sea level is, right? And as the current comes in, it pushes water into this hole, and then we can um, purify it. So it's no longer salt. You desalt the water, so then it's fresh water instead of salt water, making it more compatible with the environments that you might want to try and transport it to, right? Well, when you look at the region of the Sahara that they're trying to push back, right? If we invested in aquifers in countries like Sudan, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, the Western Sahara, Mar- I can't pronounce it. It's like Mauritania, right? Senegal, and even in some of the countries that still have a good amount of forest, right? Like Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia. And we build up stockpiles of fresh water and we transport that water to the Sahel region so we can kind of keep the green wall going. Because one of the main issues with these plants is they're not getting enough water. And as we kind of develop the land more, we can kind of start slowly pushing the Sahara back. Now, the Sahara, as far as I know, um, still maintains a pretty important ecosystem in some way. So you probably don't want to get rid of it fully, but you definitely want to get more trees, especially because we discredit. Well, I mean, people discredit global warming all the time as a hoax or something people are trying to control us with. But one of the things that we do have to look at um, is that our oceans are heating up, and what that does is, like I said earlier, 50 to 80% of our oxygen comes from the ocean, right? And it comes from different different algae, bacterias, cyanobacterias, um, drifting plants, right? They all cause photosynthesis. Well, when the water heats up because of the global warming and carbon emissions and all that fun stuff, it's killing these plants, and it's also forcing deep sea creatures and sea creatures in general to consume more oxygen because the warmer region is in the ocean, the more oxygen they have to suck up in order to maintain and survive. So it's interesting. One particular species in this um, group of oceanic plankton and drifting plants, algae, is and I'm gonna mess up this name, but it's like Prochlorococcus, and it's the smallest photosynthetic organism on Earth, and it produces, but and this is where it's really interesting, right? This little bacteria produces up to 20% of the oxygen in our entire atmosphere. And so when you're probably wondering, well, what is Prochlorococcus? Well, it's a genus of a very small marine cyanobacteria with an unusual pigment. These bacteria belong to phytoplankton and are probably the most abundant in the world. Um, but they're also affected by the heating up of water, right? So they'll die a little bit, and most of the oxygen that that aren't isn't getting released in the atmosphere because it's getting sucked up by fish. Um, And you're probably wondering what's picoplankton. Well, picoplankton is a fraction of plankton composed by cells between 0.2 and 2, and I don't know the measurement there, but it looks like and this can and it can be either prokaryotic or eukaryotic phototropes. And I mean, I'm not going to dive too deeply into the science of all this, but they're very important. I mean, 20% of our oxygen that we breathe comes from these little guys, and they're dying out. So either we compensate or we roll back on some of the industrialization. And biggest threat to that is China. So, oh, fun fact about China too. They I learned this from a friend of mine. I don't know if you guys had heard about their replanting efforts, but they attempted to replant some trees in I forget which region, right? And they and this is important because if we're going to kind of continue down the Great Green Wall, um, we don't want to do what China did, where they did a monocrop. Well, they planted all these trees, or this, it might have been a bush or something, right? But they planted all these, and they're all the same. Well, guess what? They all were weak to one type of fungus. The entire crop died. Whole region died because they tried to monocrop that area, which is a terrible idea. Most ecosystems are made up of different plants and animals and things like that, so you can't just, you know, slap 5 trees into the area and go, yep, this will work. Something to think about. But kind of getting back into the green wall, right? If you're probably wondering, well, how do we transport large amounts of water into the desert that probably won't be redistributed into the ocean, right? And well, I don't have all the answers, right? What we could do is set up almost like a reverse aqueduct where it takes the water, and this would be extremely expensive and kind of like a worldwide effort. But I also believe heavily that we need to invest more into Africa itself. That large landmass probably has an abundance of resources that we're not really tapping into because we're letting China do whatever China wants. Um, and I'm sure there's other reasons too that I'll eventually cover or discover later. But what if we, essentially built like underground aqueducts that led to well reserves in these areas that we could provide water to, and then, um, you know, try and push back against the Sahara because what they're predicting is by 2032, I believe it was, most of Ethiopia will be barren. South Sudan will be pretty close to barren. Nigeria would basically have their coastline, and like I think if I remember correctly, um, basically everything south of it would. Um, there's a river there. I can't think of the name right now, but anything south of that will still have a decent population of trees and things, but that'll eventually be eaten by the Sahara too. By I think they were saying 2042, parts of the Democratic Republic Congo's rainforest will start being eaten by the desert. It's almost like the desert is an invasive species, and what we need to do is start trying to reverse that, especially because you know that's that's crop lands that you're losing. That's I mean, it affects us more in more ways than just oxygen, right? You can't grow anything in the Sahara. Only very few regions let you, and those regions are the Nile in Egypt, the coastlines in Tunis, Algeria, and Morocco, and I think there was another small region, kind of this like islandish region off the coast of Morocco to the kind of south of, or kind of the southwest of Morocco. I think it's called the Los. It's the Canary Islands, right? That whole area, but that's an island, so it's different. But kind of continuing on this train of thought, right? If you start pushing this back and you know, I mean, it kind of provides two lines of thought. Like, first line of thought is if we throw resources into this, figure out a way to make this happen, kind of repopulate the area. Um, we the carbon emissions will be eaten up a little bit better, right? Because that's what photosynthesis is. It takes uh, carbon dioxide and produces it into oxygen through the photosynthesis. Um, and if we can repopulate a large portion of that desert area, right, we're giving ourselves more trees that can suck that up, and hopefully maybe save some of those microplankton too, who are working overtime while things are heating up. Now this could all be for nothing, and this is just the natural order of things as the planet heats up. I mean, we went through an ice age, so maybe the next part of it is to overheat, and then eventually the planet cools itself, or I mean, the planet's a living thing. It's a mixture of all the, we're all organisms on a planet, so it could be we're just delaying or speeding up the inevitable. But as we continue down this line of thought, right, we abandon the green wall, or we don't support it, or we don't you know and anyway, we don't support it as well as we could, or we continue to let the Sahara eat more and more of the region, right? And those mycoplankton that produce so much oxygen, they uh they eventually start dying off a lot more quickly, and we start losing um, more and more oxygen into the atmosphere, and then we all start choking to death. I mean, it's obviously that's an exaggeration and kind of a straw man argument about why we should do this, but it's a huge endeavor, and it's definitely something that I think we should actually throw some money into. Um, and kind of getting into the continuing down this line of thought of you know what the green wall means and how it can impact us too. Um, there's this reading some statistics, right? One adult tree, roughly around 18 inches, 100 feet, 18 inches in diameter at its base, produces about 6,000 pounds of oxygen right? And I believe that's a year. And on average, one tree produces around 260 pounds of oxygen. Or I'm sorry, a mature leafy tree produces as much oxygen in a season as 10 people inhale in a year. And that mature leafy tree is a 100-foot tree, 18 inches in diameter. And that's 6,000 pounds of oxygen, right? On average, one tree produces about 260 pounds of oxygen each year. And that's a much smaller tree. And two mature trees can provide enough oxygen for a family of four for a year. So I mean, we're really just, if you think about it, if you let some of these trees and everything grow in that region, and we kind of repopulate the region and get some more nice, I mean, I imagine the rainforest in the DRC would kind of expand a bit more north as the region became a little bit more tropical and green, and we'd essentially be kind of we'd be producing enough oxygen in 10 years to kind of maybe balance out the amount of population we'll have by that point, right? Because the regions that produce the most oxygen, like I said, through trees alone, are Brazil, with the Amazon rainforest. And I mean, the Amazons aren't just in Brazil, they're also, I believe they reach parts of Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, you know, and I don't know for sure. I think Bolivia is just too far south of that, but that's those are nice, mature, leafy trees that we keep cutting down and burning, which is why people are a little a little upset, a little more upset, right? Plus, think of the precedent set if we were able to push back and manage this ecosystem back into the Sahara, right? We're essentially replanting what many people would consider just dead land. I mean, a desert doesn't really allow you to grow much. So we'd be kind of resetting the clock a little bit, giving us more time. Plus, it just shows that we have the ability to manipulate the environment a lot more than what many people might think capable. I mean, the largest deserts in the world, right? Antarctica and the northern Arctic region are the largest, but those are cold deserts, which I always found interesting that we've essentially told the world that cold deserts exist, like the tundras. Well, I guess not tundras, but the Antarctica is just one giant desert. It's interesting to me, but and we'll get into that another time. Sorry, I'm rambling about that a bit, but like imagine if we took Australia, right, a primarily desert region, and we kind of start micromanaging the ecosystem a bit more, growing a bit more trees in regions like Queensland and New South Wales, where cities like Melbourne and Sydney are located, and then kind of let Western Australia maintain that like deserty ecosystem. Maybe certain animals might survive better, or new species might prop up, or I mean, other things could happen from it. But the idea is that you've now changed the ecosystem a bit more and kind of reversed some of the desertification that's happening, right? I mean, if you look at an area in India, right, in between Pakistan and the bulk of India itself, right, you have that really nice fertile area right there by the border of Pakistan, um, and then just kind of a deserty region where it's like I believe they call that region the Rajasthan. I'm looking at Google Maps right now to kind of give you an idea, and you can too, to see areas that we might be able to like manipulate the ecosystem a bit and get more green on the planet. Provide us with more oxygen producers. And there might be other effects to this. This is just a interesting idea and an interesting thing that they're actually doing, trying to combat the desertification the Sahara is causing. And that's what I was really trying to get at, is like, um can we kind of fix this? Can we see how far we can manipulate this? How much of I mean, imagine if we push the Sahel region all the way past Sudan and into the south region of Egypt and Libya and Algeria, right? And all of Mali, Niger, Chad, and Sudan are reforested. That'd be incredible to see, right? And then you could kind of look at areas around Saudi Arabia, right? You zoom in on Yemen. There's some areas that look like they might, um, I don't know, be able to handle reforestation, right? And we kind of plus we're providing ourselves with more natural resources with wood. I mean, we can use wood to create coal, and then I mean, there's a whole other issue there because then you're just saying we're bleeding back into to um, what kind of people consider kind of causing this with global warming and everything. But the idea is if we reforest and then are a lot more selective, right? Essentially, what we're doing is and then it's just the train of thought that I'm going off of. I might be completely off my rocker with this idea, right? But essentially, right, you look at places like the United Kingdom and France were for a long time because they were building ships and everything. They were cutting down tons of trees, and now there's areas that are nice and grassy, but not really populated with trees like they used to be. If we can do something like that in the desert, we could definitely fix something like that in the UK, right? Um, Plus, it shows the level of manipulation to our planet that we previously might have thought impossible. I mean, I didn't think about, can we reforest deserts, right? Because I mean, you look in the United States and you see large swaths of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, parts of California. That's there's a couple deserts in there, right? Central Oregon, which is an area I'm quite familiar with, right, is a high desert. Um, but what if we found a way to reforest it to where you have more pine trees than juniper trees and things like that? And that's a whole different thing because it was an invasion of juniper trees that killed pine trees, or at least so I'm told. It's something I'm still kind of learning about, but still an interesting concept, right? I mean, reforestation of a desert. I mean, and it's not like the high desert where we still get quite a bit of rain. No, this is a dry and just barren land that they're attempting to combat. It's something people might consider, chipping a support or some ideas, or maybe find a way to get more people on the global stage invested in it. I don't know. It's a interesting idea, and I really want to see them do it. I mean, you can already kind of see parts of Nigeria losing to the Sahel region as it like has little breakthroughs. Um, but yeah, that's my whole episode on the Great Green Wall. I did touch on another thing that we will eventually be going over, and that is aquifers. They're really cool. I don't know a ton about them yet, but from what I do, well, I mean, I'll kind of talk about it now instead. I don't think they're worth a full episode in of themselves, but aquifers, like I said, you dig a ditch behind like a seawall that sits at sea level. It doesn't, so it lets water spill over, like kind of like filling a bathtub or something, right? And then you desalt that water, so now it's fresh water, and then we can find a way to transport that water places, right? And the reason I thought about this is because I was reading an article about how the Colorado River is constantly being drained to fight fires in California and things, and they have aqueducts running in from the Colorado River into California and things like that, right? So what if we, you know, built aquifers along the coast of California, got this fresh water, transported it, or even stored some of it, right? So we had to make a couple man-made reservoirs that we fill up with this aquifer stuff, and I mean it's or aquified water, desalted water, right? Fresh water, and now we're getting these reservoirs built in California, parts of Oregon, sure, parts of Texas, maybe some on the East Coast too, right? Um, and the idea is you get these man-made reservoirs that are being fed water from these aquifers that we then use to help fight fires. So we stopped draining rivers like the Colorado River. You're probably wondering, well, then aren't you just draining the ocean of the? Well, that's the thing, right? As you're fighting fires, and it evaporates, and it goes back and drops back into the sea, and I mean, it also might help countries that don't have uh, great well, like infrastructure. Thank you. There we go. I just thought of the word infrastructure, right? So they're not getting fresh water, right? You introduce this idea and kind of show them cheaper ways of doing it, and now you're giving countries like um, Somalia, right? You're giving them access to fresh water that they can do themselves, right? Self-reliant. I think a lot of people like to target Africa and these other regions for them needing to be more self-reliant without providing them with proper solutions or things like that to help them become more self-reliant. Um, Plus, I'm really big into the idea of developing Africa more in order to provide them with industries that we can then pull from China, so we destabilize China a bit more and kind of bring their power down. Because that's my big thing, right? Is we allow China a little too much power on the world stage. It's just one issue that I've thought about. All we really need to kind of consider thinking about when it comes to aquifers are how feasible are they, how easy are they to I mean they should be really easy to make. I mean it's essentially just digging a hole behind a artificial seawall type deal, right? And how do we transport the water from these aquifers to a like a reservoir? And the nice thing about this is we're creating a ton of jobs, right? Because you only need people to maintain the aquifer itself, people to transport water to the reservoirs. It helps firefighters out, helps fire prevention. It might even boost ecosystems a bit more because we're providing more moisture to the area. I mean, it's general ideas. It might not work, but it's something that I'm kind of looking into because I love looking at these solutions to these little problems that we tend to ignore. So it's definitely something worth looking into. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. I thank you guys for listening. If you guys want to get in touch with me, maybe some of you want to come on the show and talk about some topic. I'm open to a variety of topics. I'm currently editing a video that'll come out Saturday that I talk with a friend of mine about the and I'm going to call it this, but it's not really what it's called. This is the slogan that was behind it, but the Best and Brightest initiative that'll be out Saturday. It's kind of like a bonus episode this week, or as to make up for Tuesday because I was dealing with some personal issues. But if you guys want to come on and talk about a subject or something, you can always email me at gentleman'sjury@gmail.com. Um, or I'm setting up a Discord page, so as soon as that's set up, I'll link that into to our YouTube page, which kind of acts as like a hub for our information, right? So if you guys are interested in coming and talking to us, or you want to be on I'm open to talking to anyone about almost anything. Um, so if you guys are interested in that, just hit us up and we'll work something out. So as I was saying, thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.